Hi. In this next episode, we're going to talk about the sudo command. Sudo stands for super user do. In Linux, there are privileged users and there are unprivileged users. Whenever you need to execute a task that require privilege, like adding other users, deleting other users, changing other users' files or permissions, downloading software, working and configuring system-level services, you need some sort of privilege to take those administrative type actions. Well, that's where the root account comes in and the ability to run commands as the root user, well, you would use sudo. So before you type any command, you can write the word sudo to run that command as the root user. And if you are in a specific group, in some Linux distributions, the name is wheel, and in other Linux distributions, the name of that group is actually called sudo. So if you're in this administrative group, then you have the option of elevating your privilege to run commands as the root user. You can even start a separate root shell session with sudo -s, or run commands as other specified users with sudo -u followed by a username. Now, in order to grant privilege to other users and other groups, you can edit that master sudoers file that will define who on this server is granted this sudo privilege and can invoke the privilege to run commands as the root user. Well, in the next lab, we're going to show how to run sudo commands and how to configure that master sudoers file so then you can begin to start delegating administrative tasks to other users without having to provide them with that root level password. Please join us in the next lab where we discuss all things sudo. In this episode, we're going to be talking about the sudo command. What the sudo command is a way to elevate your privilege. In previous episodes, we have mentioned that the root account is the original default administrative account. Now, think about a situation where you might not want to give access to a powerful account to your power users. You want their own user account to be elevated in privilege. Well, that's what sudo allows you to do. You might remember installing this server and creating our first user administrator and checking a box that says this user is an administrator. If you do remember, let me show you in the terminal what that did. I'm using that user who we promoted to administrator. Now, if I type ID, you can see that I am part of a group called wheel, and really that is what is allowing me to run commands with sudo. Sudo simply stands for super user do. The original super user on Linux is the root user. Now, this allows me to assume the root user's position by typing sudo followed by the commands that I'm typing in. So this allows me to type in then sudo followed by some command that only the root user is allowed to use, such as user add, and add additional users on this server. So I'm going to say sudo user add user1, and because I'm part of the wheel group, what's going to happen is it'll ask me for my password and simply execute this command. If I run this command again without the sudo, hey, guess what? Let's try it for user 2. It's going to say permission denied because, again, I am running a command that requires access to a privileged file. It won't let me execute this command unless I run that sudo behind it. So that is basically how sudo works. If you are wanting to, again, delegate administration and add other administrator users, you can either add them to the wheel group, You can identify that user is also part of the wheel group, or you can update the master sudoers file. To update that file, you have to open it with the command visudo, but of course, only the root user is allowed to update that file. So I'm going to update that file using sudo permissions because I'm not using the root user. Now I can open that file and you can see this master file allows particular users to run various commands as the root user without needing the root password. So that's great. That's exactly how I want to delegate my administration. I want users to have the power without having to use my account. So let's go down here and add a record that will allow one of my users to use sudo commands. Here you can see that the group wheel is having that power, and that's why any user who's part of that wheel group is going to be able to run all the commands on this server. So I'm going to add another record here that's going to add a single user. Let's say that user is Jim. And I'm going to say on this host, Jim can run all the commands, but he also doesn't need to provide a password. So there's that additional record down here, that same thing without a password, although it is commented out for the group wheel, and anyone in the wheel group might have to provide their password. Well, this user does not have to. I have simply given this user the permission to run root commands. So let's go ahead and save this file. I'm going to press escape, :WQ, and save and exit. Now, watch what happens if I switch to the root to the Jim user, su Jim, and now I can run sudo commands. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to say user add user2, and again, where I'm getting permission denied, if I run sudo user add user2, well, hey, this time it works, and I have granted sudo permissions correctly to another user. So now I can actually give the admin responsibility off or be able to delegate some administrative tasks. So that is using sudo and how to give sudo permissions for other users. I hope you've learned something from this episode, and I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.